How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to another edition of the Stupid Questions podcast. Today, we're going to be talking with Lexi Kelson. She is a registered dietitian on the staff of Precision Fuel and Hydration. Had the awesome opportunity getting to know her actually before this podcast, where she helped me figure out some dietetic stuff for Race Nutrition. And then also, she's an amazing music artist that I did not know before actually recording this. So that's a super awesome piece of the episode that we'll get to dive into because you guys probably already have noticed I love music. She's a part of a band and then has her own individual, I guess, band, or is an artist of her own. So I'll make sure to link those in the show notes. But without further ado, I want to introduce you to Lexi Kelson. So where are you from?
I am from Atlanta, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. Grew up here, born out in California, but really grew up here. Went to school at University of Georgia. Stayed in the state of Georgia ever since.
Yeah. That's awesome. For some reason, whenever I was prepping this, I guess because I've just talked to the other Precision Fuel and Hydration people, I was like, oh, Europe, we're getting ready to talk about UK or something. But yeah, I forgot that you're from Atlanta. That's awesome.
Yeah, I do not have a British accent. I have like a very slight Southern accent instead. So
yeah,
enjoy the American sound today.
Oh, I love it. So you're right outside of Atlanta then right now even?
Yeah, so okay. I'm like from the airport. It's like a 40-minute drive with no traffic, of course.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's super, super convenient just to be in Atlanta. Yeah. Get it anywhere.
Yeah. So recent travels, where have you been recently?
Most recently, I was actually in the UK with the team.
Okay.
I was there for a week in the office. And then whenever I go over there, I always try to add on like a little bit of a trip somewhere else just to see another city nearby. Because once you're over there, it's so easy to get to other places, which is something I definitely wish was more like over here.
Yeah.
So I actually went to Amsterdam right before I went into the office just for a couple of days and hung out, and then got to be with the team, which is so nice to be with them in person every once in a while. And, you know, I feel like I've become friends with them.
Yeah.
So getting to actually hang out with them that's always really nice.
Yeah, for sure. How long have you been with Precision now?
I started like very part-time freelance kind of thing let's see, I think it was like December, January at the start of 2022, I guess.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I think.
Yeah.
So like a year and a half, and then joined full-time a few months after I started. That summer I joined full-time.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, we're definitely going to get into that and so many things.
Awesome.
But now that I have, I guess, just a little bit of context, I'd love to ask you a little bit more of a deeper question.
Yeah.
A self-introspection one. Who is Lexi according to you?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
You've listened
I
to a
came
few
prepared.
Episodes. Yeah.
Actually, I didn't prepare. I was like, you know what? We'll see what I decide on the spot today, who I am.
Yeah, there you go.
I am a weird mix of different things.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I've learned a lot about myself this past year, is that I'm such a hodgepodge. And as much as I would like to be like a specific label or fit into a specific category, and just, I'm very black and white. I like labels. I like things like that. I like order and structure.
Sure.
I don't fit that. And learning to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And yeah, Lexi is a weird mix of stuff.
How so?
I am super like OCD, structure oriented, organized, to-do list freak, like fully on that end of side of things.
Mm-hmm.
But I also am like obsessed with words and creativity, and I'm a musician and like songwriting, and very emotional and moody for no good reason. So I feel like I'm the two ends of like the right brain and left brain.
Okay.
And it doesn't really, I'm the extreme of both ends. There's no middle ground with me.
Yeah. That's interesting that you say that, because I guess I'll just take this moment to share a little bit about myself. But so growing up, my father was a musician.
Nice.
He was like very much an artist, like did a lot of oil painting, did a lot of colored watercolor painting, acrylic, different stuff, very much the artistic side. My mother was like the go, super driven person. But interesting, like when I grew up a lot around her, definitely more than my dad. So I think I took on a lot of that drive. But then I was also really obsessive with, like her side, the obsessive with kind of what you're saying, structure and organization. But then I really do dive into the creative stuff as well. Like I play guitar and piano, and I've written some music. Probably not to your level, judging by your setup there. But yeah, so it's interesting. I haven't met too many people who have kind of that right and left brain. I would say, are like pretty even and equal. So my question to you is, what afforded that? Was it nature? Was it nurture? Like, how did you grow up to the kind of develop Lexi into this person?
I think it's very much my nature.
Yeah.
So similarly to you, my parents are kind of in that same split almost. My mom is super like organized and to-do list person. My dad is much more creative, free spirit. And I think I just got the extreme ends of both of them. Because ever since I was little, I mean, it was always super creative with music and writing and, like the emotional, I was acting and performing. But then I was also obsessed with math. Like I had algebra problems on my birthday cake one year.
Wow.
So,
what year?
Oh yeah. Full on nerd.
Yeah.
So I think that's just been me ever since. And it's more the process of it has more been coming to accept it and be okay with it and like lean into both of it.
Yeah.
Versus developing one side over the other.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have siblings?
I do. I have an older sister.
Okay.
She's also in music as well, has a normal like big girl job as we call it.
Yeah.
And then does music too. And then her husband is a musician as well with a big girl job or a big boy job.
Yeah.
And so I'm super, super close to them. I moved to an apartment that's literally like a 5-minute walk from their house so I can be near them and their dog.
Yeah. What kind of dog?
Oh my gosh, I wish he was in this room with me. He is a Samoyed or Samoyed.
I've not
a
heard of
big white fluff ball, like
Okay.
80 pounds of white marshmallow fluff.
Wow.
And a derpy little face. Sweetest animal ever. That is my nephew. Like that is my nephew.
That is your nephew. It
Yeah.
almost sounds like a Great Pyrenees. Are they similar?
Similar, not
Okay.
as dense. He's much more just like fur.
Fluff. Yeah.
Yeah, all fluff and stupider than a Great Pyrenees for sure. He's not the brightest star.
Yeah.
But we love him.
Yeah. That's awesome. So do you have a dog or anything of your own?
I really wish. I would like to have a dog soon.
Yeah.
May or may not have like applied for a puppy
Yeah.
in the near future.
Okay, nice.
But
You have to
yeah,
apply
so
in your
far
apartment.
this is my dog.
Yeah. That's awesome. So tell me a little bit what you were like growing up as a kid. Like we touched a little bit on both sides of the right and left brain, but tell me a little bit more about your childhood.
I was super intense. I remember I asked my mom like what I was like as a kid one time. It was a while ago, and every time she's like, "You were just so intense."
Mm-hmm.
I am so sorry. I was just very like full blown into whatever I was doing. So whether that was, I loved school. And so I was very much like, let me excel at school, but I just want to spend all my time doing school. I want more homework kind of thing. And then I was also playing the piano since I was little, since I was 5. And so once I decided that I was going to play the piano, it was like, oh, I'm playing that piano. And so I was just like obsessively practicing all the time because I loved it and I just wanted to do it all the time.
Wow.
Yeah, I was very intense.
Yeah. I can't name many of my friends who have ever, or any human, I think, have said that I want more homework.
Yeah.
That
is my like claim to fame now.
Yeah. So were you like a 4.0 student all throughout?
Yeah. So one of my still like most painful memories of my life is that in college, I got a 3.99 because I got an A- in a class and they wouldn't let me like account for it and try and bring it back up. And that one class, it was photojournalism. I will never forget. I'm so upset about it. Like of all classes, I'm not a photographer. I wasn't trying to be.
Sure.
Clearly, I didn't try hard enough in that class.
Yeah.
So yeah, very much like obsessive straight A kind of personality.
Wow, that's wild. So tell me about the first piano piece that you ever heard that you wanted to play.
I remember it was the 1,000 Miles by Vanessa Carlton.
Yeah.
My dad comes from exactly. Probably just
that was
stuck
like
in
my
your head the
favorite
rest of
song
the day.
for a long time.
I love that song. My dad grew up in a musical family, and so he was always playing music for my sister and me. He would like blast Shania Twain in the car, in the driveway. Yep,
My
dance
mother.
around. Yeah,
I feel like a woman. I know every word.
exactly. So it's just it's a classic.
Yeah.
So he used to play, one of the songs that he would play for us was the Vanessa Carlton song when it came out. And when I heard that piano line, I was like, ooh, that is cool.
Yeah.
That just kind of like hit something in me.
Yeah. So how old were you when you learned it?
I was probably like 8 by the time I learned it.
Wow.
But
That's awesome.
I might have been older than that. I don't remember. I don't remember what year it came out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was 5 when I started piano.
Okay.
So it was started pretty young.
Yeah. So can you play by ear as well as read music?
I've gotten better at playing by ear over the years. I can play like, it takes me a minute. I can't just hear something and then jump right on.
Sure.
But I can definitely play like chord progressions, like the Nashville notation system, like that kind of stuff. I can pick out the chord progressions pretty well, but I can't. I wish I could just hear like a riff and just automatically go for it, but I'm not quite there.
Do you have a favorite key that you like to play in?
Oh yeah, A. I love A. A major is like my go-to favorite.
I wonder why.
You know, I think it's the way that the chord feels. Like if you do like the one chord, the A chord, and then you go into that like 4 sus chord with the D and the E on your like the right side of your hand, that just feels really nice to me. It's like an easy, the structure of it. Just for some reason, I've always loved that.
Yeah. My favorite key is E, and I think it's because it's more moody. You get like the C sharp minor in there.
Oh yeah.
It's just very emotional. I love
like,
whenever I play piano, it ends up sounding very sad. But I love that type of music.
Is there any other way to play piano though?
I know, exactly. It's such a passionate instrument. It's so different.
Exactly.
Like I love guitar, and it's more like jazzy, fun, and you can play some meaningful stuff, don't get me wrong. But yeah, piano has a way to be able to lay emotions on the keys that you can't really do. At least I can't on a guitar.
Yeah, same. So. I can play like basic chords on the guitar, but I'm nowhere near proficient at all. But piano just feels like you can express a lot with piano.
Yeah. So tell me, like you're going through grade school, high school, you're obviously doing really well. What was the decision path for you for figuring out where to go to school, and then obviously what landed you in the dietetics world?
Yeah, it was a very roundabout way. So my undergraduate degree from University of Georgia is journalism.
Okay.
I was always writing in high school, like wrote for, like I just loved writing. I loved writing essays. And so that was definitely the clear path for me of let's do writing. I wanted to be a magazine writer, preferably like magazine food and music stuff. And then Georgia has a great journalism program. I wanted to be at a bigger school because I came from a small private school, so I wanted to have the big school experience. And did journalism as my major, and then did a music minor with piano, and then the music business program. The plan was to go into music business and sync licensing, so like licensing out the songs for TV and film. I worked for a summer in LA doing sync licensing and everything, and I liked the combination of the creativity side that you're working with music, but then you're also, the structure left brain side of like the contracts and the legal side of things. So that was the plan, and that was, throughout all of college, I was doing music stuff and producing and playing out and writing for a food magazine, a college food publication, had a blast with that. Wrote for a music publication online. Yeah. So I was like full on food and music magazine journalism kind of thing. So I graduated in 2018 from Georgia and worked as a copy editor actually in Atlanta. Okay. For a travel company. But it was like internal copywriting, copy editing. So there was no creativity. It was very much of like making sure that everything was technically sound from like a writing perspective. Yeah. Checking facts. I mean, it was like fun for the first week because it was new. Yeah. And it was, I was however old, 21, whatever. Yeah. And, worked in that job for about a year, but it got old really fast because there wasn't a creative outlet in it. I wasn't passionate about the words that I was editing. Like I didn't have that kind of interest in what I was doing. Sure. And I was also commuting an hour and a half each way to work every morning, which that's
a lot of driving time. Sheesh.
Yeah.
It's a lot of gas.
A lot of gas and a lot of time where I felt like I had no life. Like I would get to Atlanta in the city. I would get there super early, get to a coffee shop, work on like my own music for an hour or so, then go into the office, work, and then I would wait out traffic by going to the gym before I went home. And then I would get home at like 8 or whatever.
Yeah, and just
and
go
then
to bed.
be getting up at 5 the next day to do the same thing. And so I was like, for a job that I didn't even like. So that burned me out pretty fast.
I'm sure.
And during that time was when I really was like, what do I like anymore? Like, I know I like music, but the music industry is not something to count on.
Yeah.
And so I was like, what do I actually, like, what am I interested?
Yeah.
And so I was listening to podcasts all the time, like when I was working or in the car, about sports nutrition and exercise science. I was starting to like do a lot more lifting at the gym and kind of learning that for myself and trying out that process with my own just, gym stuff.
Right.
And so that just became like more and more of an interest of things that I cared about. And I wanted to learn how to read this research paper. I didn't have to take many sciences in college. I was a journalism major. Like, they didn't care.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know how to read a research study. I would like to learn. And so I just started learning and just listening to as much content as I could. And so by the time I left that job, that had become what I was interested in. Like, I was so interested in learning about the food side of things. I'd had a brief stint of, some disordered eating myself in college. And so I wanted to learn more about, okay, what is it actually, like, what is the science behind this? Because I'm not doing something right with my body, and I want to know what the right way is. Very like black and white, right and wrong. I want to know what's right. And so just really dove into that. And then after or during the pandemic, actually, I was, I had left my job at that point. I was working from home doing some freelance stuff and decided I'm going to have to go back to school because my interests have just grown with myself.
Sure.
And I needed a better education if I actually want to have a job in this field. Like, I'm not going to just try and be in this field without having an education about it first, which is easy to do with nutrition. So I was like, you know what, let me try and learn first. Yeah. And so I just kind of decided that, now was the time. I was young enough to say now's the time to go back to school. My parents were super supportive. I was living with them at the time too. And they were like, hey, we will, support you through this and help you figure out if this is what you want to do. And so thankfully they were, encouraging and saying, start taking some classes. Like, it can be online because everything's online now with COVID. So it was a good time to do online classes. So I just started I took like 5 sciences that summer online. It was not fun.
It doesn't sound fun.
That was a bad idea.
Pretty serious sciences, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was not. I mean, it was all online too. So there was like online labs where it's really hard to like simulate dissecting things.
Yeah.
So I did that and took them and applied for grad school to get my master's in nutrition and pursue the dietetics pathway, and kind of took off in that direction ever since.
Wow, that's an amazing story. So you touched on a number of different things I want to circle back on. So first of all, it sounds like your initial interest came into diet and health because you said there was an eating disorder?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I wouldn't say that I had a full-blown eating disorder. Mine was probably more just disordered eating. But I did grow up with a sister who did have a full-blown eating disorder, being in the entertainment industry. And so I was very familiar with that space, and that was kind of always going to be fresh in my brain.
Yeah, it's interesting. So my sister had one, and then I thought I never would, but then I ended up having one when I got I was like 19 to like 24, 25, maybe even 26. And then my wife was like, wait, this isn't normal. And it's interesting because I never thought, because just full disclosure, it was a bulimia. And I didn't think like I'd ever do that thing. But then I found myself doing it once. And then it was like this weird addiction that it would like grew to like, oh, I can do this and overeat to get there and whatever. And it was just like a really messed up way of thinking that I was totally unaware that I had even gotten to that point, because it wasn't even an issue in my mind until my wife was like, no, this is really serious. Like, we got to work on this. And luckily got through it. One of the easier things, I guess, by the grace of God, that I've been able to overcome. But for you and your family, like, what was that journey like getting through that?
Yeah, it was definitely tough because I was pretty young. So my sister was in high school and she's 2 years older than me. So I was like 14, I guess, 13. And we were actually homeschooled most of our childhood growing up with a big community of people around us, so we had like group classes and stuff, but our family was very tight knit. And so everything that went on with one, the rest of us knew about it because we were around. And so I definitely watched a lot of the progression of, her going through that process. And my parents were very much of, once it was clear that it was a problem, they brought in a nutritionist and kind of a doctor, and brought in different people to come into our house and have those sessions with our family to try and work through that. And it was definitely helpful. Like, my sister's doing great now. She's so much healthier. Yeah. And, but it was also like hard as a 12, 13-year-old to hear the information for someone else. And, knowing what I know now, that nutrition is so individualized, sometimes I'm like, maybe it wasn't right for me to be in on some of those sessions. And because I didn't have the context, I was too young. I was very like shy and quiet too. And so I'm not going to say if I have questions or if like I'm confused about something, I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to listen. And so it was hard to have a lot of that information coming in without the context for me. And I think a lot of that just stayed like dormant, kind of like how you said it, you watched it with your family, but it just stayed internal. And then when I got to college, then it was like, oh, I don't think I like how I look anymore. My body's changed, and very much of like, I'm in a new environment. This is stressful. I'm going to eat to make myself feel better because I love food. And I mean, I can eat like a lot of food. My stomach can handle a lot of food. And so I just kept pushing that. And then it got to the point of, oh, I've noticed my body's changed. And then all the stuff that was dormant of how to quote unquote fix it starts to come up. And then it says, okay, well, now we just got to change everything and take out all the food. So I think there was a lot of like stuff internal that I didn't know was there until I was in a situation where I just wanted to change something about myself.
And then how did you correct that? Because you said that you found that all these things came up and you were going in one direction, and then maybe that wasn't the healthiest. So was it just through your degree that you kind of learned these things, or what was that journey?
It was actually before my degree. I had some good friends and my sister who raised it to me and said, I think there's a problem here. Like, you're not, you look different, but there's a bigger behavioral problem here, that you're not acting the way that you used to. And I was getting sick all the time. I was like almost passing out at the gym. Like, clearly something was wrong.
Yeah. Wow.
And so I had some really good friends and my sister come around me and say, hey, there's something wrong. And so I started working with a nutritionist myself. And I was in therapy already. And so started working on that with a therapist. And through that process, the health coach nutritionist that I work with, she focused on information with me, because she was like, you like to learn. I'm going to just let you learn everything. So then this can become like your decision to change how you're treating food with your body. So I just started learning exercise science and nutrition science from a how to help myself perspective with her guidance. And that's what really got me out of the hole, because I started learning, this is affecting my health overall. This is affecting my performance in the gym. And this is how the processes are working. And this is why I'm getting sick all the time. Yeah. So it was definitely an education component that worked for me.
Yeah. It sounds like in some ways, like it's really fortunate that you had all of that experience to kind of go hand in hand with the education that you're grasping for. And then as you move into your master's, like, I'm sure you wrote quite a bit, especially with like your journalism background, about these things, and like that informed your research and whatever projects you're working on, I would assume.
Absolutely. Yeah. It definitely gave me a leg up in terms of applying for like graduate programs and being in the grad school process of, I had a lot of foundational information that maybe I didn't get all those sciences in my undergrad, but when I went back and got them combined with the personal experience, I felt like I was in a good place to kind of excel at the program that I had gotten into, and, take that knowledge. And actually I saw it out in the real world first. And so being able to go in and then learn a little bit more of the background, it definitely helped with my education for sure.
Yeah, that's so cool. Thanks for sharing that story, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
So as you're moving toward graduation, let's just say you're 2 or 3 weeks out, and at that time, Lexi has like this vision or thought of where she wants to go and what she wants to do. What was that like as you graduated, and what was the difference between that vision and then what reality was?
Graduation from grad school or undergrad?
From grad
Okay.
school.
Yeah. I think my vision when I was going through grad school, towards the end, I knew I wanted to be in sports nutrition, but I wasn't totally sure if I wanted to be like the setting. So I think the vision was like, I knew what content I wanted, but I didn't know what the medium was going to be. Okay. And so, which I'm glad I wasn't dead set on one specific area, because, you know, there's so many ways to do sports nutrition. There's so many different opportunities, and
so many sports.
Yeah, there's a lot of sports, and there's, you know, you can be in the actual setting of the team. It could be private practice. There's so many different versions. So my main goal was, I want to be able to, you know, have the content of sports nutrition. I want to have a combination of some creativity and some more like structural stuff. And then that was kind of it. Which was great, because it opened me up to kind of, one, see what was out there and piece together different jobs that I thought might be a good fit for me.
Yeah. What year did you graduate grad school?
That was, 2021, I guess. Okay. No, 2022. 2022.
Okay, so it was the same year that you got saddled with Precision Fuel and Hydration.
So I graduated. Let's see, it's 2024 now. I was trying to remember what year it is. I have no clue. Time
flies.
It's like, how old am I? I don't know. Okay, so I graduated 2022, that summer.
Okay.
So I was traveling that summer. My sister got married in Greece, and so I was finishing up my degree from Greece, and then came back, did my whole thesis, defended that, and then that fall I started applying for different jobs, and I started working in I had started doing like some like private practice stuff, so like individual athletes I was working with, individual just recreational athletes, for whether it was like a body composition thing, whether it was just overall health, doing some private practice stuff with nutrition once I graduated. Okay. And then I started working with a powerlifting group, a coaching company with a couple of her athletes.
That's cool.
And then I was also started working for a private like orthopedic surgery practice. And they were doing a lot of like pre-surgical nutrition optimization for these patients, who some of them were overweight, some of them were underweight, some of them just needed some help, you know, adjustments to their nutrition. So based on what the doctor was saying that they needed to improve going into the surgery, I was helping them from a nutrition perspective to optimize their nutrition status. So I started doing that pretty soon after I graduated, because I was applying for jobs while I was finishing the degree. Yeah. So I started doing that in the fall. And then while I was doing that, I had heard about Precision for a while, and some athlete that I had come across before had mentioned their products. And so I just kind of, you know, looked them up. I had this whole, in the classic left brain side of me, I had a whole spreadsheet of all these different companies and different people and like what they did and what I thought about them, and, you know, filter it to based on what I was interested that day. This whole system. And they were on that system.
That's amazing. Yeah.
It was so helpful, because then it was like every time I come across a company that I'm like, hey, that actually might be a cool avenue for me, I would just put it in that list and I could go back to it. So yeah, that's a tip for any people in school right now. Don't make a spreadsheet of companies. I had Precision in there, and after I graduated, I was going through the list of people that I wanted to reach out to. And when I looked at their website, I was just like floored by how education focused they were. Mm-hmm. I loved just the content side, and it was such a good combination of very scientific education, but in a way that was like easy to understand and creative, and there was, you know, humor around it. It was just like that special combination of the left and right brain that I felt like I appreciated so much. And so with the journalism background, I was like, man, I just really like the way that they're doing their copy on their website. Yeah. And so their focus, you know, being on sodium being good in the right context and sugar being good in the right context, lined up with the research I did in my master's about added sugar for collegiate athletes not being bad, and almost like pushing that a little bit for collegiate athletes. And so I just resonated with their message and reached out and thought, you know what? I looked on their staff list. I was like, they don't have a dietitian. That's weird. And so I reached out and I just was like, hey, I really like your company. I noticed you don't have a dietitian on your staff, and I think you should. I think it would be valuable, and I think that should be me, and I would love to chat. And so it was just like, I mean, I thought they were a massive company too. I thought it was,
Oh yeah,
massive,
outside
massive.
looking in, they always look so good.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
like, oh yeah, this has to be 1,000 employees.
Absolutely. And I was like, I did not realize they were in the UK. I honestly was like, I had no clue. Yeah. And so when they reached back out, like a genuine like person reaching back out, I was shocked. First of all, I was like, who are these people? Why do they actually take the time to respond to me? And they were like, yeah, you're right. We don't have a dietitian, but we're also like not even close to Atlanta. And so they were so nice enough to just like, hey, let's jump on a call and just get to know you and just chat. And so I did that fall, went through a couple chats with a couple of the team members, and they were building out their video call group at that point. And so getting more people to have those consultations. And they're like, you would actually fit, with what we're looking for with my experience. And it was just a part-time gig. So I had other part-time jobs already. It's like, that would be a perfect fit. I thought, hey, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to love doing this.
Yeah.
So I started to get upskilled on that, kind of meet with them over the holiday stint. It was kind of, everyone's traveling for the holidays and everything. So I really started doing those calls that next January as like one of my few part-time jobs that I'd created this like own little working for myself company of one that year, and loved doing the video calls. I was like, this is what I was trained to do. This is awesome. This is so great. And then they were coming to the States. A couple of them were coming to the States to go to do some work at spring training with baseball.
Okay.
And, I hadn't learned the sweat test process at all. And so they, had said that, Atlanta could be a good spot to have a sweat test center. I was like, I would love to learn.
Definitely hot enough.
Exactly. I was like, we've got people struggling outside. I am a sweaty person. Yeah, exactly. I was like, Southeast, I'm surprised there isn't one. And so when I flew to Florida and met them in Florida for the spring training stuff, and ended up coming back home with a sweat test machine in my luggage.
Nice.
I got trained up on the machine, helped them with the testing and spring training. And by helped them, I mean, I was like learning on the spot, and they helped me figure out what I was doing.
That's awesome.
They were so patient with me. I was so appreciative. So that kickstarted the sweat testing side of my role in the company, and started doing that. I still wasn't like a full-time employee, but I was just a sweat test center now, trying to do some tests in Atlanta and build brand awareness basically in Atlanta. And I already had several athletes that I was working with. They were either doing triathlon or like endurance, or I knew enough people to kind of get the ball rolling. Yeah. So I started incorporating sweat testing that spring of 2023. And then I kind of did a lot of that in Atlanta. And then as some gigs would come up, they would send me to different places as a freelancer contractor and, test some different teams and different groups that whole spring.
Yeah. What's your most memorable sweat test been so far, you think?
Oh, it's tough. It's always interesting when you get someone who's like way opposite of what you think you would do. So like someone who thinks that they're going to be super salty and then they're not, and then someone who thinks that they're not salty and then they are. Those are always fun because it's like, it just shows that sometimes you can guess, but a lot of times you can't. Those are always really fun, but like, it's so fun to test the different teams and to go into, the pro sport teams and do that. Especially like going to Georgia, getting to go to like pro sport or college sports teams. That's just very much like, it's the Southeast, that's like the vibe around here is, pro and college sports are such a big thing. So, that's always fun to get to go through a whole team and just test all the players.
Yeah. For the saltiness of a person, does that actually change?
Yeah. So as far as we know, it doesn't really. It might vary a little bit here and there. But when it comes to like the practical recommendations that you would get from it, it wouldn't change enough to change the recommendations. I know that they've tested like Andy, they've tested him multiple times over the span of 10 so years. And his is like still super close to the same number every time. Yeah.
I need to come do one. It's just
consistent. Yeah. It's pretty genetically determined. So it stays pretty consistent.
Yeah. So if someone for like me asking for a friend, wanted to come and like get a sweat test done by one of these centers, because I saw a recent graphic. You guys have them all over the world now, obviously.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Atlanta being one of them. What is the process for that, and cost, and how do you guys schedule it?
Yeah, so normally the cost ranges, it's around like $175, $200, depending on the location. It's around that range. It's a totally at-rest test. So when you reach out to the test center, get on the schedule. So if someone reaches out, get them in, have them come in for a test, run through the whole process of stimulating the sweat glands on the forearm with the machine.
It like makes you sweat.
Yeah, so it literally like tricks your sweat glands into thinking that they need to produce a sweat response. So there's a little like chemical material underneath the discs that we put on your forearm, run a very like low grade electrical current through the two, like the closed circuit basically, for like 5 minutes. And then normally people feel like a little bit tingly from it. They feel like, some people feel nothing. Some people feel like there's something crawling on their arm a little bit. I always try and tell people, it's like, I promise I'm not putting a bug on your arm. I swear. It's just your sweat glands.
Yeah, just chewing through your skin.
Yeah, no bugs allowed. And then we put a little collector disc on top of the spot where there's like a localized sweat spot now. Put a disc that's tightened on your arm, collects the sweat just by sucking it into the little tube.
Yeah.
Fills up a little coil. Turns blue because there's a little bit of blue dye, so I don't have to try and guess when clear fluid reaches a point in the clear tube.
Yeah.
And then use just a basic syringe and put the needle not in your arm, in the tube.
Yes.
That freaks people out a lot of times. They're like, I did not know I was getting a shot. Swear I'm not going to stab you.
Yeah.
And so pull out the sweat sample, run it through a sweat analyzer machine, and within, the whole process takes like 20, 30 minutes. Then your sweat sodium concentration.
Wow, super interesting. So how many of these are you given like a week right now?
It varies. So like there was earlier this spring, I had a couple a week. Right now it's probably like maybe one a week right now.
Okay.
But we'll go through stints where there are just so much more interest. People hear about it from a video or something, and then suddenly I have a ton. But typically more in the summer or as race season is starting, gets a little bit more busy. So
just for you guys, if somebody wants to get on and like schedule one, do they go to the Precision website?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a button that says, book a sweat test, and then you can see all the centers, figure out which one is closest to you. Yeah, we've got like 90 sweat test centers around the world. So there's bound to be one somewhere near you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So what does a day in the life of Lexi look like right now? And it can be within Precision and outside of?
Yeah. So after the sweat testing stuff that I started doing with them, when I joined full-time, that also included a few other kind of roles within my role. Working on, so I'm like officially on the marketing team. Okay. That's where my home is. Cool. So I am writing a lot of like the educational content, a lot of the blogs in our knowledge hub. So day in the life these days, like this week, I've been working on a few blogs in the works. So if I get up, kind of catching up on everything that I missed because they've already had half a day over in the UK and I'm, a few hours behind. And so catching up on all that, a big chunk of the day is normally going to be spent working on whatever blog or research for a blog that I'm working on, trying to do that deep work. I also have a handful of athletes that I support myself as part of my role. So I'm also like a little bit on the sports science team.
Cool.
So I have like some triathletes and runners and cyclists, keeping tabs on them, making sure they have their race plans for whatever races are coming up, jumping on a call to figure out their strategy, sending over their strategy, writing the case study, crunching the numbers to figure out what they did, how we can do better next time. Nice. That's normally a part of each day. And then a lot of editorial meetings throughout the week. So like the newsletters that go out, put a lot of time and effort and work into those. And
yeah, they're usually pretty detailed.
Yeah, they are. And I love reading them. Like before I was a part of the company, I was like, oh, these are so cool to read. Now I'm like, now I get it. Yeah. They take time. Yeah. And so being on the marketing team, that's part of my role, is to help refine those and, be in that meeting to make sure that we're putting out the best content that we can. So normally there's an editorial meeting involved in editing other people's writing, other people's case studies, doing some editing, maybe a sweat test if it's one of those days.
Yeah.
So it's such a mixture of things.
Yeah.
I do a lot of webinars too, or, presentations. So I've gone to a few different camps and done a presentation with some sweat testing or virtual presentations. That kind of hits on most of the different things that I'm doing.
Yeah. So where does music fit into this? Because you're still a musical person.
Yep.
It seems like an outlet.
Yep. Yeah. So music is one of those things that like, I feel like it varies all the time of what I'm putting into it. But right now, I am doing a little bit of my solo project. So like I'll still write to some other top lines from other producers. And then those get refined and produced and sent to someone. But my main focus of music is the duo with my brother-in-law. And so a few times a week, we'll have like a studio session, come into the studio, which is in their house, and work on either like I'll have written something that we need to put into the track that we've been producing. We'll go through the production elements of different songs. We've released a fair amount, so we're hoping to release more this year.
So you're on Spotify is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. I'm looking this up right now. It's called what? The duo?
So the solo project is Lexi, Leshii, whole thing. And then the Shiny Things is the duo that my brother-in-law and I are. So we're usually producing and refining songs. We have a few sessions a week, but mostly on the weekends is when, we both have time outside of our normal jobs to like actually sit down and really put some deep work into it. And so we'll have some good production sessions with people that we collaborate with and, getting them ready to send to whatever label they're releasing on. And
wait, hold on. You have 117,000 monthly listeners?
Yep.
I didn't even know that. I had no idea. I'm so glad that we're talking about this because now I get to expose you to our small crew here.
Oh, boy.
But that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It's fun. Like, it's done better than I expected in some ways.
Yeah.
It's music industry. You just never know what's going to happen.
Sure.
But I'm lucky enough to have like the family element of it. So it's relatively easy to keep a foot in the door.
Yeah.
Because there's a few of us involved and it's, we're all doing it a little bit. My sister does music for TV and film. So like Love Island, all those kinds of shows, you'll probably hear her voice in the background of. And
oh, really?
So we all just kind of like chip away at it and see what can happen because we like it somewhat. So it's worth trying.
Yeah. So what do you typically write about? Like, do you have a genre that you guys focus on, or tell me all about it.
Yeah, so most of the Lexi stuff that I had done historically was a little bit more like tropical house, pop, a little bit more in like the house vein, but I would just kind of write about like whatever was going through my mind, whether it was...
whatever life's happening.
Exactly, whatever's going on in life, or other people's lives that I was like, oh, there's an idea, there's a concept for a song, and then I would just run with it. For Shiny Things, it's a little bit more of like the chill pop vibe. So a little bit more atmospheric, a little bit more like chill house stuff, a little bit less dancey.
Yeah. So if you had to make a choice right now, you're only allowed to do music or you're only allowed to do dietetics, what would you do?
I would probably choose dietetics just because,
really? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think music is it's so easy to get burnt out. And it's, being such an intense person, if I'm like, when I'm in the music mode, it's all consuming and it's a lot, like it's draining. And the industry it's just like, I like structure too much to totally rely on something that's so unstructured and it's kind of a crapshoot. Like you can put in a bunch of work and be the top of your game and still get nowhere. Yeah. I really appreciate the stability of dietetics and there's still an element of creativity and it's a lot less draining and like emotionally taxing. As much as I love music, it's hard on your emotions. It's like hard on your mental capacity for just functioning day to day. I feel like my moods, I would just not be as much of a functioning person if that were my entire life.
Yeah, I feel like it comes, I mean, obviously I have not produced to the level you have, but when the stuff you're writing, like some days it's like, oh, it's just there. It's like the emotional juices are flowing, the creative energy is all there. And then other days it's like, I cannot get any of this to work.
Yep.
It's just like bouncing around. So
Yeah.
how do you just come to the table whenever you feel that like you're ready to go? Or because you said you have scheduled studio sessions. So
Yeah.
how do you do that?
Yeah, I definitely wish that I could only like do stuff when my emotions are ready for it. But
Yeah.
honestly, it's been helpful to hold myself to more of like a schedule of, okay, this
Yes,
producer
discipline.
needs a top line. Like I'm getting paid for this. Like I have to produce work. It makes you appreciate it from like a business perspective more for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I have to write when I don't feel it. And sometimes it still produces a good song and sometimes you can tell. And then it's like, I have to go back and change it, a couple weeks later because you can tell it's not good.
Yeah.
So it's been a process of, which honestly, like the journalism background helped with, of you have to learn how to write when you don't want to write and to produce good work, even when you literally feel like you don't have the inspiration. Because sometimes that's what music is. Like when it's a job like that, I've got a list of concepts in my phone. I can always go look at one of those if I have to and just start fleshing it out. And it's like pulling teeth sometimes, but I've definitely learned how to push through the creative slump as much as you can.
Yeah. Is there anything that you do like getting into that zone to kind of help prepare? Because I know, we do warm-up sets in the sport world or whatever. Do you do something to kind of prep the mind and body of what you're about to go and try to accomplish?
I usually read through like the notes app on my phone. I have a folder that's like concept ideas and other songs that I've written. I usually just kind of like, if it's not coming naturally, if I need to like do a warm-up or something, I'll go through those and just at least get the creative juices flowing and to remind myself, okay, some of these songs that are in here, I wrote when I didn't have creative juices flowing, or I was able to still produce this when I didn't think I could. And so it's almost like a reminder of, okay, yes, this is hard, but you can do this. You've done it before. So who's to say you can't do it again? Yeah. So it's more of like the pep talk for myself of, yeah, you can at least try.
Yeah. So do you go and perform at places?
I haven't in a long time. So in college, Athens is like a fantastic music scene, especially being part of the music business program. And
Athens, Georgia.
Oh yeah, Athens. Yeah, not Athens, Greece. Athens, Georgia, where UGA is. Yeah. I mean, I was doing a lot of open mics there. I did a couple house shows, and that was much more in my like indie acoustic kind of vibe when I was doing songwriting and that stuff. So it's easy to go out and just take my guitar and like play a song at an open mic. I haven't really performed recently at all. Hopefully with Shiny Things, like we'll be able to do some DJ sets because it lends itself to that. Like we've got one of those like controller pads, and my brother-in-law used to be a DJ at different places in Atlanta. And so it definitely would lend itself to that. And fingers crossed, we'll be able to, do that at a festival or something in the next couple of years, but I haven't in a long time.
Yeah. Do you miss it?
I think so. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that sounds hard. Like, I'm such a grandma. I go to bed so early. Like, I just want to be in my bed.
It's a lot of prep, staying up late.
Yeah, I was like, they stay so late, and it's just it's an effort. But the performance aspect of it, I grew up like acting and in plays and stuff, and so I do like the performance side of it once I get into it.
Yeah. So of all of the things you've produced, music, written stuff, maybe a project you worked on your master, something in precision fuel and hydration, what are you most proud of?
I'm most proud that I went back to school while still chipping away at music. Like the fact that I was able to keep both those going. And like you can ask my sister, there were a lot of days that I did not think that I was going to be able to do either of those, let alone both of those. I am such a perfectionist and I hold myself to ridiculously high standards that is not healthy for me. And so the fact that I was able to like start over in the sense of going back to school after being out of school for a little while in a totally different field and be the new kid, and then also be like, mediocre at music, learning how to produce for the first time and still at least trying, that I'm really proud of myself and I can't even take credit for it because it was all of like my family and friends who were like holding me up day by day of, you can get through this day. But yeah, I'm definitely proud of both of those.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are good things to be proud of. Persistence, being able to say that you've done something. I remember growing up, I had a hard time doing that. And the first thing I ever completed, kind of against my will, was a college degree. And we don't have to go into what I think about college degrees, but it did actually give me a sense of like, oh, I completed something for the first time. And I think that did set me on a course to realize that long and difficult things can be overcome. So
absolutely,
it definitely adds a lot to the character, I think.
Oh yeah. Character building moments for sure.
So are you a spiritual person?
Yeah, so I actually, as part of my music journey, I grew up a worship leader in high school. Yeah, so that was kind of how I got into like the singing side. I was playing piano already, and I had a voice teacher at my church, and got involved in like the high school worship band.
Oh, cool.
Was like mentored and everything by that group, and got a lot of opportunities to practice those music skills in that setting, and learn. I feel like that grew me the most as a musician, honestly, just because I was around some incredible, like sometimes the best musicians you can find them in the church. Like there's some incredible musicians, and I was lucky enough to be
Perry
at a church.
Came from
exactly Ryan Tedder, the guy from One Republic. I mean, so many, and there's something to be said for like the way that Christian music is very repetitive because you have to get the people to sing along. Yeah. So there's a element of like learning how to write a pop song from that. Yeah. And so I feel like that grew me the most as a musician, of being around these incredible musicians and learning how to structure a song so someone can like actually listen to it once and start to sing along, which you have to have in pop music. So yeah, I was lucky enough to be in that setting all growing up, and I was a worship leader at my church in Athens as well. And yeah, that was a huge blessing to be able to be a part of that community and, learn from them.
Yeah. Is that still a part of like your active journey today?
So I'm not a worship leader anymore. So I've kind of moved more towards the pop, tropical house kind of music stuff, just from writing of like stuff going on in my life and the emotions of it. But yeah, I still keep in touch with a lot of those people, and, it's cool to see the different ways that we were all musicians in the same environment. Yeah. And then some people have stuck with being a worship leader, and some people have made that into their career. Yeah. Others have turned to the music for other stuff. And it's such a, I feel like it's such a, not a trampoline, but like a launching pad for so many people in that high school time. Yeah. And I was lucky enough to kind of have that in my life.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So a while back, you mentioned that you were like part of this small school, private school vibe. If you had your own kids, or if you had the opportunity to send them, I guess, to private school, would you do that?
I think I would send them. Oh gosh, this is hard. I think about like my sister's kids, because like I don't want kids. That sounds really difficult. But like kids that I would care about. Sure. I would want them to go to a mixture, honestly. I feel like I liked elements of being like homeschooled and having the private school because I loved school. And so I got to do more, and I got to, learn whatever I wanted to learn, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But I also think that it depends on the kid. So like if the kid is not structure based and not wanting that extra, like if they just don't do well in structure, I would send them to a hybrid school, which is where I ended up in high school. So honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, the answer is probably I would send them to a hybrid school, because then you get the elements of learning how to be in that structured environment that, like prepares you for college or prepares you for a work setting. But then you also get the freedom to pursue other things and not be like in one box all week.
Yeah. A lot of my friends grew up. So I went to private schools on and off, and there's something to be said about the power of consistency. And maybe if it was just like for 4 years here and then 4 years somewhere else, but it was like all over the place. So I experienced like the private schools. I experienced going to a school from, that was 35 kids, and then the next year going to 3,500 kids in like high school for the first time. So it was very interesting to just, it's a cultural thing. It's almost like going to a different country, because you're so exposed to so many different levels of affluence or completely not. Like everybody's kind of coming into that same place. So definitely affords a set of experiences that I don't think you could get somewhere else. So I think a mix is probably good. Yeah, I'd agree.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah. So where do you want, or what do you want your life to look like in 5 years, do you think?
I really love the way that this job like lets me do a variety of things. And I want that to be continued in 5 years. I feel like having the variety of things makes such a big difference for me mentally, because I don't feel like I have to be stuck in one area just because I'm such a mix. And so in 5 years, I want to still have that variety. And I think feeling less like imposter syndrome in 5 years would be fantastic, because I still feel like I'm still relatively young.
How old are you?
I am 27.
Okay.
So I'm like, I feel like I'm more confident than I was, but I'm still, I've heard that in your 30s, life is just the best. And so
I'm almost 32. It's great.
I'm really hoping that that's the case with me. So in 5 years, I would like to be more confident in like what I'm able to bring to the table, because that's still, I feel like in your 20s, you're like, do I bring something to the table? I don't know.
You definitely are.
Hopefully. So
I don't even work with you, and I can definitely tell that is the case.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
They haven't gotten rid of me yet, so I must be providing something.
Exactly.
I think feeling less of like the imposter syndrome, having the variety, and I still want to be in this field. Like I was worried when I went back to school of, am I just going to like go through a phase and this is a fad and I'm not going to be interested, but I still want to be in sports nutrition, and still chipping away at music. Like I still want those two things as my career path.
Yeah. So you, even though you said you may not feel like confident or whatever, and you kind of have this imposter syndrome, from the outside looking in and getting to talk to you now for, an hour here, I got to, for those who don't know, you helped me figure out some nutrition issues of my own, because Andy connected us after I interviewed him a while back. So thank you for that.
Of course.
But getting to know you for that time and this time, like, it seems that you have a good deal figured out about who Lexi is, what she likes, what she does not like, how to segment your time and do things like that you truly love and that you find passion in, and being able to moderate the days that you don't feel super creative with, even still pushing through and having the discipline and then going to your other work. Like, you seem to have a pretty cool life balance. So some people, I think most people, if you told them, yeah, you can go be a sports nutritionist, dietitian, and also be a professional music artist, they'd be like, that doesn't make sense at all. So in my last question for you to like give to those listening, some people may think that they are what you said in the beginning, like a weird mix. I don't think it's weird. I think it may be strange compared to everybody else, but I think that's the beauty of life, and especially in the world that we live now, when that you can work online and you can do so many different things. So what kind of advice would you give to somebody who wants to build a life that may not be the norm 9 to 5 one job type of a thing?
I think the biggest thing is that it's easier than you think it has to be. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be like when I first thought about creating a job out of a few different jobs, I was like, oh, well, no one does that. Like, I don't know anyone that's doing that, and I don't have a cookie cutter plan to follow. Yes, it was difficult in some ways, but it doesn't have to be. Like, if you like certain things, you can make that work. There are so many ways. There's like 1,000 ways to get to the same endpoint. So who's to say that you can't just get there a different way, but still end up with a job that you like in a variety of things? So I think it just like, or at least for me, it was telling myself it doesn't have to be this whole ordeal. Like, I made it a bigger deal in my mind than it actually ended up being. And you can try something and you can change your mind. I feel like that with nutrition too. It's like you can have an opinion and you can free yourself up to change your opinion on it as evidence evolves. So it's the same thing with your life. Like, you can have a plan for your life and you are free to change that and to decide to do something else and make it look different. If you learn something new about yourself or you learn something new, like, there is nothing wrong with pivoting and just changing it up. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. And more people are pivoting than you realize. And if they're not, they're probably not happy that they're not. So might as well be one of the pivoters and just get on with it.
Yeah, that's great. We can put that on a t-shirt. You are free to change.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a beautiful quote. Well, Lexi, thank you so much for coming on and sharing so much about your life. I'm so happy that we had this interview because as I was writing out questions and thinking, the music thing was not even remotely on my radar. So I'm so happy it was.
That's awesome.
Do you know Nick Goldston? Do you know who that is?
I don't know him personally, but I follow him on Instagram, and I know that he's a musician. And I've heard you did an episode with him.
I did, yeah. We talked about
to
his Grammy and that whole journey.
Yeah,
of jazz, blues, and stuff. Yeah, super talented guy.
So talented.
Knows his stuff super well. But you guys should get connected. I have to introduce you guys because he's super awesome.
I would love to meet him.
I feel like
That'd
you guys
awesome.
would jive. Yeah, I'll make sure to craft that.
Cool.
But cool. Well, Lexi, thank you so much. It's been super fun.
Yeah, I so appreciated talking to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again so much to Lexi for coming on the podcast and sharing a bit of her journey from dietetics to music to the sports world that she's involved in. It's just a really cool story to be able to unpack for you guys. So thank you so much for listening. If you made it to this point in the podcast, just want to say thank you so much. If you don't mind commenting, subscribing, or reviewing anywhere you're listening, that would be super helpful. If you want to sign up for a newsletter, you can do that at the stupidquestions.show website. And the final words I want to leave you with are from Lexi herself, and it is that you are free to change. So don't get stuck in the mud. All right. Thank you guys so much, and we'll catch you in the next one.